Hi everyone! I've promised you all a video on how to make proofing bowls for the bread recipe I shared yesterday as part of our quarantine quilting daily deal. What you'll be receiving, we can't show you the bread because we ate it and gave it away, so there's more coming tomorrow. But the recipe gives really detailed instructions on how to make that bread and the process and how you use the bowls to let the bread rise. And the rope leaves a really cool kind of pattern on the bread. It does a really nice job. I used to rise the bread in wicker baskets, which were rigid, and I found this is much easier to use the bowl to just pop the bread down onto your peel to be able to bake it in the oven. So anyways, you're going to get, all of you who did the daily deal, which we completely sold out of, so thank you all very much. They're all ready for pickup when it stops storming. So don't worry if you've claimed one through social media and talked to me, yours are set aside, but there isn't any left, I believe, to sell unless someone doesn't pick up, and then I'll post it. You'll get 2 of these hanks of rope. You'll take the paper off of it. Each of these will get you 2 proofing bowls. Finding the end, there's like kind of a cord that sticks into the hank on either end, and you want to find one of them there. So it's going to unwrap off here. I generally just throw it on the floor and then I unwind a bit to get myself going. Talk a little bit about the machine setting. Ahead of time, I've wound a couple extra bobbins. I have one inside already. I'm using poly thread. I'm using matching thread because I just like the look of it for rising bread, but you could use whatever you've got around. It's fun to use variegated, fun to use different colors of thread when you make these. It's totally up to you. It's going to be in your kitchen for your bread. Then I come over here. I want to go to my zigzag stitch. I want to set it at about 5.5 millimeters. For those of you with 9 millimeter machines, don't go any more than 5.5 because if you do, you're going to find that it's just too wide. I'm also going to take my stitch length up to 2. I've found that works best for me. What I use for a needle, I've had questions already about special needles. You can probably work with any needle that you have. An 80 needle I would use. The ones I prefer are these Schmetz Microtex needles that are chromed. And my reason for that, then Microtex has a nice long sharp point that punctures the rope really nicely. You're less likely to skip a stitch. The other thing that's great about these is the chrome plating. What makes that better for this project and others, when I'm teaching wax canvas classes, the rope bowls, the jelly roll rugs, I always recommend this specific needle because the chrome stops it from getting hot. Quite often, we break needles because we're pulling on our project, but also because the needle starts to warp as it heats up, and you'll see how fast I go. It's pedal to the metal on these. You're putting a lot of stitches per minute. At least I'm maxing out what my machine can do. That's 900 per minute. So that needle is burning hot. This keeps it a little cooler, less likely to bend. I find while they're more expensive by a few bucks per pack, they last twice as long. So these are my go-to. I use this for just about anything. Any of you who've taken classes with me know that I'm always plugging these needles. I should get a commission from Schmetz. So if anyone watching this hears that, let them know. Anyways, to start, so machine's ready, extra bobbins. My width is set at 5.5. My length is set at 2, and I'm ready to start. So I get the end of my coil. I have the tail hanging off to the right-hand side. This is very important. And all I'm going to do is make a little coil. About 3 rounds, it looks like that. I don't use any pins. I just get it coiled, and I come over here and start over to the left side. And I get my zigzag, and I go down, put my needle in the stop down position. Then I'm going to just back up come closer to the center. All I really want to do is get a nice sort of secure little coin to start my bowl with. So you can see I've got it kind of set up so that it's nice and stable. I'll come in and I'll grab my scissors and trim those threads. I'm ready to go. Got my foot down. And all I'm doing, the first rounds are a little trickier. I might have to lift. If I had my knee lift on, I would use it. But this way you can see, for those of you who don't have, what you need to do is just lift that presser foot the first few rounds. My left hand's helping manipulate it, and the right hand is guiding. You can see I have my open toe embroidery foot on. This is personal preference. I find that this foot just does the trick for me when I'm making bowls. It's got a little groove on the back that helps feed everything in. And I can see my field of vision's really good. I can see that I'm catching both sides. So much like making jelly roll rugs, you can see I'm not forcing. I'm letting the feed dogs on the machine do the work. It's my hands are just acting to guide. So the feed dog is pulling that rope. I've just got my long coil down here, and I'm working it around. So right now I'm building the base of the bowl. Picking up thread. Now, for making, this tutorial is specifically for making the bowls for raising bread in. With the recipe that I'm going to share with you, you make 4 good-sized loaves of bread with that recipe. What I like to do is I have 2 different sizes of bowl. Ones that have a 6.5-inch base and ones that have a 7.5-inch base. The reason I have 2 sizes is so that I can gift an appropriate size of loaf of bread to different sized households. So we like to give away the bread as presents. It makes us popular, and we need all the help we can get, right, George? So I'm just going along. And you can see I'm just keeping this nice and flat. I'm not adding any tension, because if I pull on this, what's going to end up happening is I'll end up bringing the sides up. You can see here, sometimes you'll get a slubby bit in the construction of this rope, and that's okay. It's not going to affect my bowl. I just want to maybe slow down a bit as I go over it. So I'm going to keep on stitching, pedal to the metal, try to keep you entertained till I get to the point where I'm going to turn up. I'm going to make this one a 7-inch base, because with your 2 hanks of rope, you would get 4 of these from those 2 hanks. I know there's enough rope to get that out. So I'm just going to keep letting it build. If your rope starts to twist, just give it a little wiggle. Just uncoil a bit. And I look at it and I think it's around 6 inches. I'll give it a few more rounds and then I'll get out my favorite tape measure. It's probably about time. And then I'm going to take this tape measure and measure across, and there you go, 7 inches. Who knew that years of sewing would create my ability to guesstimate size? So now I'm ready to start bringing the sides up. So what I'm going to do, if I'm doing a bowl like this that has a hard straight side, you then come up and you pull this right up high and put lots of tension in the rope. But that's not the kind of bowl I want. I actually should have had my actual one sitting here for rope bowl, for bread proofing. I want to have a more gently sloped edge. If I raise it in here, I'm going to find that the shape of it isn't going to be as nice to make a round dome. So what I want to do now is I want it to be a little more gentle. So I'm going to keep this tilted at right around 45 degrees, and I'm going to put a small amount of tension in my hand. And you'll be able to see pretty quickly how my slope is coming. Now the key here is consistency. If I have a lot of change in how much tension I put in this rope, or if I really move this up and down, if I can keep that right around 45 and keep the same amount of tension, I'll get a nice, gently sloped bowl. Perfect for proofing bread. Questions people will ask is, what if I miss? What if I go crazy and slip off? That's easy. All you're going to do is just lift your needle. Say I had split this open and gone off, and just backtrack and continue to sew. Sew right over those threads. But what you don't want to do is, if you miss, think I'll go back and get it later, because it gets really hard to get your bowl in underneath the needle. I'm just keeping it right around 45 degrees, and the sides of my bowl are getting nice and gently sloped. I've got George videotaping this, and I'm hoping he's not making you all dizzy, because he seems to be moving around a bit here. Now, in the bread recipe, I included a little blurb about how I care for these bowls that I use just for bread making. Now, I flour them directly. When my bread has risen, my bread dough has risen, and it's time to proof the loaves, what I do is I put about a half a cup of unbleached flour into the bowl and rub it quite well, just like greasing a pan, into the surface of the bowl, so that once the bread is proofed, it'll release nicely. The dough recipe is slightly sticky. And when I say slightly, I mean you want it to be just slightly sticky, not a ball of goo. And what I find is, as long as I flour them well, so then I would rub that half cup flour or quarter cup of flour in, and then I dump out the excess into the next bowl and add more if needed. Then after I'm done raising the bread or letting it rise and then going to bake them, I stack these bowls up and store them in a plastic container till the next time I bake bread. Having said this, if the next time you bake bread is a year from now, that's going to be pretty disgusting and rancid. We're talking if you get into doing this in a routine where you're doing it, say, once a week. Right now here we're quarantined, so we're baking every 3 days, and that's different. But then once I get to the point, I wouldn't want to leave them more than, say, a month or a few, like 3 or 4 bread bakings. And the key here too is if you had bread that's stuck and there were chunks of dough in it, then I'd be washing it out. Mine are release really nicely, and it's just flour residue that's in the bowl. I shake out the excess and store them. When it's time to wash them, you can wash these in the washing machine, and then all you're gonna do to set them to dry is just to kind of block them the same way you would a sweater, a wool sweater. Just sort of set them up in the shape you want them to be in and let them dry out really well before you use them again. So you can see my sides are coming up here. And it's getting to the point where it doesn't, I maybe need one more row, and that's about it. You don't want the sides too high. You want to just have room for that. Oh, and here we're out of bobbin. So this is a good point to show you this. Run out of bobbin. This is looking pretty good. I maybe only need one more row. So here's my bowl. It's ready to put the dough in. I've got a nice sort of 45-degree slope. You can see that the slope of the sides pretty much echoes whatever angle I've held it at as I make it. And this one's quite nice and domey, so that's a good shape for a bowl for bread rising. I'll put one more round on just so you can see how easy it is to start if you run out of thread. I'll put my new bobbin in that I had ready. Pull my thread up. Go back a little bit from where I started, back stitch once or twice, and just continue on. I'll go around one more time. The last round, you can put just a smidge more tension in so your edge isn't totally loosey-goosey. And we're talking a little, and here I have these threads to know where I was, so get them not caught. I'll get there and I'll back stitch and stop. Then I'll show you how I like to finish them when I'm using them for proofing bread. Now, I do decorative finishes on the ones that are for accessories, the ones that I sell. Someone's going to comment now, hey, that rope doesn't look the same. That's because it's not. This is macrame cord that I use for these ones. It's a little harder to manipulate than the clothesline. Either one works well. If you had a bunch of this left from the 70s when macrame was your passion, you totally could make some more out of these. The key is you want to be using cotton rope because the cotton just works really nice for releasing the bread dough. I find it flours nice, it works well. This one is easier to manipulate and easier to learn how to do bowls. I put a loop on for more than one reason. I like how it looks, it's cute. But then if I'm proofing them, sometimes I'll proof my bread and I'll bake something in the morning and then just leave the oven where it's warm but not on, and I'll throw them in if I want to speed things up because God knows I'm always in a hurry. This is nice to grab them out of the oven without sort of pushing on them too much and then changing the shape of your loaf of bread or risking it fall, like God forbid. Okay, so all I've done is I've made this loop, and then I'm going to come in here and just kind of squash this underneath and zigzag. I'll trim my threads. Ooh, don't cut the rope. Cut a little tail there. Shape it. And it's done. And then I'll show you here. Here's what's left. It's about half, or almost exactly. You might have a little wee tail left at the end of it. And all I would do is before I would start again, because this will be a god-awful tangle, because it's like on a hank and not a ball, I'd roll this into a ball, and then I would roll it all up in a ball, and then you start again and make another one. And there you go. Enjoy.